I've been sent an email from somebody called David, and at least this one isn't about Shakespeare. I'll put the full thing on the screen, but here's the summary. He's a member of a small walking club, and he's asking if he can take his group up into the hills and teach them to navigate. He says he learnt to navigate in the army, but he doesn't hold any formal qualifications. He's got years of experience, and the group has offered to cover his transport costs, so he thinks it's a good idea. Well, I've only just got this email, so a few minutes ago, but I'll give it a try. One thing, David, please keep in mind, I am not a lawyer. To get a definite answer, I really would suggest that you speak to a qualified lawyer, not just somebody you've seen on social media. How can I put this? Let's face it, there are a lot of people on YouTube who are pretending to be experts in their fields, and they get away with it most of the time as they know slightly more than the people watching. There are some fully qualified lawyers on YouTube, but I will freely admit that I am not a lawyer. So this is just my layman's understanding of this topic. I would say the first bit is easy. Can you teach somebody to navigate? Yes. Do you need any qualifications to do that? No. That's it. All through history, people have passed on skills without needing any certificates. Parents teach their kids. Friends teach each other. My neighbour taught me how to look after my roses in the garden. So if you want to teach somebody something, like map reading in your garden or in a local park, then go for it. As far as I know, there is no law stopping you and no qualifications are needed. But in David's question, he also mentioned that the group were covering his travel costs and the teaching would be in the hills. I would say those two details, being in the hills and receiving some form of benefit, this completely changes the situation. If you receive any form of benefit, whether it's wages, a free lunch, or in this case, your transport costs, then I think that in the eyes of the law, you are now at work. And we all know that what happens if something goes wrong when you're at work. The hills are a potentially hazardous environment. And once the police, the lawyers, the insurance companies, or even in some cases the press get involved, you will be seen as the person responsible for the group's safety, legally, professionally, and morally. I'll give you a real example which happened last year, and it's why I've come here. I was teaching a navigation session just on the other side of the valley, over there. And while we were having a cup of tea and sandwiches, oh, this is England, that's what we do. A cup of tea is not optional. We watched a mountain rescue helicopter land just at the top of these rocks here. And they lifted up a teenage girl and her mother. Later on, I was driving home on the radio, I'd heard that they'd slipped scrambling down these rocks here. They weren't badly injured, and they both were expected to make a full recovery, which they later did. Now, the family was just out walking. The mum and dad made a decision that didn't work out. Honestly, these type of accidents in the hills, they happen all the time. And thankfully, eventually, in this case, it all worked out okay. But here's the point. If they'd been paying somebody to lead them, everything would have changed. Why they were in the hills doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. They could have been taking photographs or practicing map reading, or even just out for a nice walk in the countryside. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that money or some form of benefit changed hands. And that means that the leader would have been held to a professional standard. So let's get back to the question. Can you teach your group to navigate? Yes, absolutely. Can you as an unqualified person, get paid to lead a group in the hills? I would say no, because if you're being paid, even if it's just having your travel costs covered, then you really should have been trained how to manage risk in this possibly in hazardous environment. And after the training, you should have been properly assessed to prove that you understand the training. Honestly, David, trust me, if something goes wrong, one of the first questions the police, the insurance company, etc. are going to ask is, were you qualified to be doing what you were doing? If the answer is no, even if you've been doing it for years and you've got lots of experience, you are going to have a big problem. So, so let's go back to the lady and her daughter who fell down these rocks here. When we talk about managing risk to a professional standard, this can sound really complex, but it's actually extremely simple. The leader should look at a situation and then decide how they're going to deal with it. In this case, the situation was that it had been raining, so the rocks were slippery. The family group were up there and they wanted to get down here, you know, but that's not the whole picture. You know, you've got to look at the whole thing. You have to include the fact that the parents hadn't been trained how to operate in this type of environment, you know, this type of area. They also probably didn't have the right equipment, or if they did, they may not have had the knowledge of how to use it. So the mum and dad made a choice to scramble down these rocks, and it went badly wrong. If the group had, you know, if it had been dry, then it might have been okay. But in those conditions of wet rock, it wasn't. If they'd employed somebody qualified to lead them, then yes, they could have gone straight down these rocks. I can bring people down these rocks safely by managing the risk. It's not just me, by the way. Everybody training for any type of outdoor leadership qualification is taught that a hazard is something that can cause harm, and the risk is the likelihood that it will happen. Having said that, you don't always want to go in the absolutely safest route. It's supposed to be a fun, adventurous day out in the hills. You know, so there's going to be a bit of a risk now and again. But as a professional, your job is to reduce the risk to a manageable level. As I said, if you don't know how to do this and something goes wrong, David, you have a big problem. Because we all know that very soon afterwards, all sorts of experts will appear and point out what you should have done in that situation. As an example, in this case, the safest thing that the family could have done to get from there to the bottom would have just been to walk along, turn, and then walk back. They still would have ended up here. But if they'd employed a leader, then that person would have recognized the hazard. You know, the crag has a potential to do harm, the rocks here, and the risk, the likelihood that that hazard would actually cause harm. And it had increased as the rocks were wet. The leader would have also known that there are ways to reduce the risk down to a manageable level. I'll put this onto a split screen and I'll demonstrate one method of doing this. The basic idea is that you're not lowering somebody down the rocks. They're not free abseiling. The rope is simply there to stop them if they slip. You know, they move down under their own control. They're still scrambling down. And once the rest of the group is safely down, whatever it is you're going down, you will need the ability to abseil yourself down. But again, it's not a free fall abseil. You know, so you keep your rocks, keep your feet on the slope. There are a few different ways to attach people to a rope. And the one I'll use in this split screen is, it's often used for adults or older children. But for younger children, or for anybody with issues such as vertigo or ataxia, cerebral palsy, or any of the other conditions which might require more security, I'll use a different setup, which would usually involve a full body harness for extra support and safety. If you're thinking of doing anything like this, with a rope down crags, I would strongly recommend going on a training course with a qualified provider. You'll find loads of these online. Just do a Google search and check out some of the more established providers, because they've been doing it a long time. As an example, here in the UK, I've seen some excellent videos from Abacus Mountain Guides and JB Mountain Skills. And of course, there's the National Outdoor Centres in Brennan and also Glenmore Lodge. I'll put links to all of those in the description box. So even if you're not planning to lead other people, carrying a small rope and, more importantly, knowing how to use it, I would say it's a really good idea if you're heading up to the hills, but that's down to you. Oh well, enough of that. Now, I don't know about other countries, but in the UK, it's very simple to verify somebody has the qualifications that they claim to have. And you can normally do this online. As an example, you can check my qualifications before you book onto a navigation course. I know people do. So what's the takeaway from this? I would say check who you're trusting. If somebody is leading you or your group or your family into the hills, you're putting your safety in their hands. And there are lots of people making videos and offering courses on YouTube. And honestly, I think that's great. The more people learning how to navigate with a map and a compass safely, the better. The more the merrier. There's nothing wrong with somebody making a video showing you how to do something. But that is very different from being paid to teach or lead you personally. As I said at the beginning, I'm not a lawyer. But I would guess that a video is passive content that a viewer can watch or not, and in most cases carries no direct responsibility. But active leadership or instruction comes with a duty of care and the legal obligation of professional standards. I keep saying that. So before you sign up for the training that you've seen on YouTube and it looks really exciting, why not make a quick contact and ask the person a simple question? What qualifications do you hold? As I said, these days it's very easy to check whether somebody actually has the qualifications that they claim to have. And again, I've said this before, you can do it online. I've spoken to lots of people on my courses, and many of them have checked my qualifications before they paid for their course. Maybe that's an English thing, I don't know. If the answer is no to your question, what qualifications do you have? In my line of work, I hear this all the time. It's only hill walking, or I've been doing this for 20 or 30 years, or I used to do this in the army and that's where I learned how to do it in the military. And this may all be true. And experience is really important, but it's not the same as being trained and assessed to lead others professionally. A formal qualification isn't just a badge. It means that you've gone through a structured training process and an impartial assessment of your ability to keep people safe in the hills. And if you're the person thinking of booking a course, if that person is as good as they say they are, whether on their website or on their YouTube channel, then passing assessment should be really easy. If they're as good as they say they are, then they should just breeze through the assessment and not have any problems. So my advice would be to look around for somebody who is qualified to run the course that you want to go on. And if they aren't, then go with somebody else. But it's up to you. It's your money. I'm not telling you what to do. So back to the original question. Can David teach his group to use a map and a compass even though he's not qualified. Again, it's just my non-lawyer opinion, so it may be wrong, but I would say yes, he can. You know, in a local park or someone's garden or around the town, no problems. Can he take them into the hills and with the group paying his transport costs? I would say no. And I'm sorry, David, I know that's probably not what you wanted to hear. Oh, just one final point, and this specifically applies to the UK. I don't know about other countries. If you're taking children under the age of 18 into the hills, then in virtually all circumstances, you do need to hold formal qualifications, but that's a different video. So anyway, hope that answers your question, David, and thanks for watching.